Ever wondered what it would be like to look in the mirror and not recognize the person who is looking back at you? Imagine waking up one day and realizing that your life has become unrecognizable, far removed from everything you dreamed of being. This is the story of a man who lost his way, but found something much greater than he could ever imagine. A journey of fall and redemption that will make you question, how far can love go to save someone who has already given up on themselves? Hello, friends. Welcome to our channel. Today I will share with you a story that deeply touched my heart. A narrative about how divine love can reach even the darkest places of the human soul. If you've ever felt like you were too far away to be reached, or know someone who is struggling to find hope, this story is for you. Before we start, don't forget to leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and activate notifications so you don't miss the continuation of this incredible story that we are going to share in 2 parts. Your interaction is very important to us. The Tennessee sun bathed Oak Ridge in a golden light as 10-year-old Marcus Johnson adjusted his bow tie in front of the mirror. The navy blue suit, several sizes larger than his size, hung on his small body to grow inside it, as his mother always said. In the simple but tidy room, a world map dominated the wall, marked with colored pins representing countries where the boy dreamed of preaching one day. Posters of famous missionaries, not athletes or superheroes, decorated the rest of the space. Above the bed, in blue and gold cursive letters painted by his mother's hand, read, "Where he calls me, I will go." "Marcus, breakfast is ready," Sarah Johnson's melodious voice echoed up the stair. "I'm already going, Mom," he replied, carefully closing his children's Bible. In the kitchen, Pastor Thomas Johnson reviewed sermon notes while Sarah served blueberry pancakes. The Johnson family was the pillar of the community. Thomas, the respected pastor of First Baptist Church, Sarah, the dedicated Sunday school teacher, and Marcus, known to all as the boy of the golden dreams, due to his angelic voice and early devotion. "I dreamed that I was preaching in Africa, like Dr. Livingstone," Marcus commented between mouthfuls. His parents exchanged meaningful glances. "Look, Thomas," Sarah commented, "our Marcus is already receiving visions." "It doesn't surprise me in the least," replied Thomas, placing a heavy hand on his son's shoulder. "This boy has a special calling from the womb." The weight of these expectations accompanied Marcus like a constant shadow. Being the pastor's son carried enough responsibility, but being the pastor's son with a special calling, that was something else entirely. At the church, matriarch Eleanor Whitfield, in her late 80s and piercing blue eyes, called Marcus before the service. "That boy has a special calling," she said, pointing a knotted finger at his chest. "I recognize the fire of the Spirit when I see it, and it burns in you, Marcus Johnson. Don't waste it." During the service, sitting in the front row with his small notebook, Marcus absorbed every word of his father's sermon on the call of Isaiah. Thomas Johnson was in his element, his voice thundering through the sanctuary. "And then comes the question." Thomas lowered his voice, creating a moment of tension. "The question that God asks each of us, whom shall I send? Who will go for us?" And Isaiah's response, "Here I am, send me." When Marcus sang with the adult choir, his soprano voice rose clear and powerful. People in the congregation closed their eyes, some raising their hands, others wiping away discreet tears. His mother, in the first row, watched him with unrestrained pride, while Mrs. Whitfield studied him with intensity from the third row. On the way home, with the midday sun creating a golden halo around the family car, Thomas asked his son what he thought of the sermon. "It was powerful, Dad," Marcus replied, "especially when you talked about how God doesn't leave us in our unworthiness, but purifies us for service." "Father," Marcus asked after a moment, "how did you know God was calling you to be a pastor?" Thomas considered the question. "It was not a one-time moment like lightning falling from the sky. It was more like a growing certainty, a conviction that nothing else would satisfy me completely." He glanced briefly at Marcus in the rearview mirror. "Why do you ask, son? Are you feeling something specific?" "I don't know. Sometimes I feel like as if God had something specific for me to do, but I don't know what it is yet." "God has grand plans for you, son," Thomas said with conviction. "Just keep your heart pure and your eyes fixed on him." And Marcus believed. With all his childlike heart, he believed. That evening, sitting at his desk, Marcus wrote in his journal, "Dear God, Everyone says I have a special calling, but I don't know exactly what that means yet. Like Isaiah, I say, here I am, send me. Please show me where I should go and what I should do. Closing the diary, he walked to the window and looked up at the starry Tennessee sky. Where he calls me, I will go, he whispered, a promise both to God and to himself. He didn't know then that life rarely follows the script we wrote in childhood. He didn't know that his greatest test would not be to find his calling, but to stay true to it when everything around him tried to lead him astray. The boy of the golden dreams fell asleep under the phrase painted by his mother, dreaming of distant countries and multitudes, listening to God's message through his voice, completely oblivious to the trials that awaited him in the future. Marcus's first detour came at the age of 16, when his family moved to a larger city so that his father could take over a larger congregation. The new school was a different world from the sheltered environment he knew. There, being the pastor's son was not a title of respect, but a target for ridicule. "Hey, Saint, have you never broken a rule in your life?" teased colleagues in the hallway. Marcus tried to stand his ground for the first few months. He continued to attend the church's youth groups, reading his Bible before going to sleep, resisting the temptations that now surrounded him. But adolescence is an age of belonging, and loneliness began to weigh more than principle. It was Amber who first invited him to a party on a Friday night. Amber with her mesmerizing green eyes and laughter that made her stomach spin. "It will be fun, Marcus. No one needs to know." He told his parents that he was going to a Bible study at a friend's house. The first lie is always the hardest. The following ones came with frightening ease. The party was in a country house far from the city, loud music, low lights, and teenagers experiencing freedom away from adult eyes. Marcus refused the first beer offered, then the second. On the third, he thought, just want to know what it's like. The bitter taste went down his throat as something more bitter settled in his heart, the seed of duplicity. During the day, he was still the exemplary son of Pastor Johnson. At night, gradually, he became someone he barely recognized. "You look different," his mother remarked one Sunday, adjusting her tie before the service. His eyes, always perceptive, studied his son's face. "I'm just growing up, Mom," he replied, avoiding her gaze. It was not a lie. He was growing, but not in the direction everyone expected. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to leave your like and comment on what you think so far. Your interaction helps us a lot. Despite his secret nights, Marcus maintained exemplary grades and an impeccable public reputation. His musical talent only flourished, and when he won a full scholarship to a prestigious music university in New York, everyone saw it as a divine blessing. "God opening doors," his father proudly declared from the pulpit as the congregation applauded. "My son will take the gospel through music to places we never imagined." Marcus smiled and accepted the hugs and congratulations while internally fighting a storm of contradictory emotion. Part of him still wanted to be that boy of the golden dream. Another part longed for the freedom that New York promised, away from the watchful eyes, away from the expectations, away from the guilt that was now its constant companion. The farewell at the airport was painful. His mother held his face in her hands, eyes tearing. "Remember who you are, Marcus, and most importantly, remember who you serve." He nodded, his throat too tight to speak. New York was exactly what he feared and secretly desired, a whirlwind of possibilities, temptations, and anonymity. At university, his talent quickly made him stand out. Teachers praised her almost spiritual vocal technique. Colleagues admired his natural ability. No one knew of his past as the pastor's son, and Marcus preferred to keep it that way. For the first few months, he still called home on Sundays, still attended church occasionally, still read a few verses before bed, but gradually, like sand running through my fingers, these habits were lost. It was in his second year that he met Julian, a music producer who frequented the bars where students performed. Julian saw in Marcus what others did not just talent, but hunger for recognition, for experiences, for life. "His voice has something special," Julian said after hearing him sing, "but you're restrained. There's something holding you back." That night, Marcus tried cocaine for the first time. The feeling was one of instant release, as if all the invisible chains that bound him had been broken at once. He sang like never before, his voice hitting notes he didn't even know he was capable of, his soul seeming to float above all expectations and disappointments. words. That, Julian, smile, is just the beginning. And it was the beginning of a downward spiral that would last for years. At the age of 25, Marcus Johnson was a rising name in the New York music scene. His voice, a unique blend of soul, gospel, and R&B, drew crowds to the clubs where he performed. Julian, now his manager, has landed him contracts in exclusive nightclubs and recording sessions as a backing vocalist for established artists. "You have something they don't," Julian often said. That authentic thing, that real pain. The irony did not escape Marcus. The authenticity everyone praised came from a place he was desperately trying to forget. The hymns he had sung in church, the melodies his mother hummed while cooking, the harmonies he had learned in the youth choir. Even as he rejected his past, it was that same past that fueled his present. His Brooklyn apartment was a testament to his growing success. Modern, minimalist, overlooking the Manhattan skyline. On the walls, there were no longer maps with colored pins or Bible verses, but framed posters of his concerts and photos with celebrity. In a locked drawer, however, he kept the Bible that his parents gave him when he left home, untouched for years, but impossible to dispose of. Calls home have become increasingly rare and brief. He sent money regularly, but avoided visits. When his mother asked if he was attending any church, he would change the subject. When his father mentioned opportunities to use his talents for the glory of God, he responded with vague promises that they both knew he would not keep. "I'm busy building my career right now, Dad. There will be time for that later." But after never came, and the chasm between Marcus and his roots only deepened. The nights became a blur of presentations, exclusive parties, and increasingly potent substances to keep the rhythm going. Cocaine to energize before shows, alcohol to relax afterwards, sleeping pills when thoughts became too loud, pills to wake up when the body protested. "You're living the dream, man," the other musicians said, raising glasses in toast to their success. But in the rare moments of sobriety, usually in the early hours of the morning when he finally got home, Marcus would stare at his reflection in the bathroom mirror and barely recognize the man staring back at him. Bloodshot eye, pale skin, a smile that never reached the eye. "Who are you?" she whispered to the stranger in the mirror. At such times, fragments of ancient hymns invaded his mind, uninvited. "Wonderful grace, how sweet the sound." He pushed them away with one more pill, one more drink, one more line. Israel Houghton's song, "Thou Art Good," the one his father used to play in the car on the way to church, sometimes popped into his mind at the most unexpected moments. "Lord, you are good, and your mercy endures forever." The words haunted him like ghosts from a previous life. We are reaching the halfway point of this first part of the story. If you're enjoying it, leave your like and share it with someone who needs to hear about the power of divine love. Your feedback is very important to us. Marcus's big moment came when he was 28 years old. Julian walked into his apartment one Tuesday afternoon, waving a contract as if it were a golden ticket. "We did it, boy. Label Apex Records. Contract for 3 albums, 7-digit advance, national tour as an opening act for Elijah Stone." Elijah Stone was the biggest name in R&B at that time. Opening their shows meant instant exposure to millions. The contract was everything Marcus had dreamed of since he arrived in New York. The celebration lasted 3 days, an ongoing party that moved from her apartment to exclusive clubs, hotel suites, and back. Marcus barely remembered signing the contract, but Julian made sure everything was taken care of. "This is just the beginning," Julian promised, as they toasted champagne on a rooftop overlooking Central Park. "In 5 years, it's going to be Elijah opening for you." Filming began immediately. The album would be a mix of contemporary R&B with soul touches and ironically gospel influences that the producers insisted on keeping because they gave authenticity to their voice. Marcus worked tirelessly, often spending 18 hours in the studio, supported by a diet of caffeine, adrenaline, and cocaine. The pressure was immense. Record company executives appeared regularly, making suggestions, demanding changes, questioning artistic directions. More commercial, more authentic, sexier, deeper. The contradictory demands left him exhausted and confused. To cope with everything, Marcus increased his substance use. It was no longer just for having fun or relaxing. It was necessary fuel to function. It was during this period that he met Vanessa, a model and socialite who frequented the same circle. She was stunning, ambitious, and as empty inside as he was. They recognized each other immediately. Lost soul, disguised as success. Their relationship was intense, toxic, and completely public, frequently appearing in tabloids and gossip sites. "You are the couple of the moment," Julian said, always attentive to the value of publicity. "Keep it up." The tour with Elijah Stone began with great fanfare. 25 cities in 30 days, crowded arenas, positive reviews. His debut single, "Broken Chains," an irony that didn't escape Marcus, was climbing the charts. But inside, he was falling apart. The 12th city of the tour, Chicago, Marcus was unable to take the stage. Locked in the bathroom of his dressing room, he trembled uncontrollably, his heart beating so hard he was sure it would explode. "I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think." All he could do was cling to the toilet seat as his body rejected everything he had consumed in the last 24 hours. Julian broke down the door after 15 minutes of Marcus not responding. "Jesus Christ, Marcus, you have to go up in 5 minutes." Marcus looked at him, eyes red and face as pale as paper. "I can't do that, Julian. I can't do it anymore." Julian lifted him up, splashed water on his face, and shoved 2 pills into his mouth. "It will calm you down. Swallows. Now." Marcus obeyed automatically. "Listen." Julian held his face in his hand, forcing him to maintain eye contact. "You have 5,000 people waiting outside. You have a multi-million contract. You have a career that millions would kill to have. You're going to get on that stage even if I have to carry you." Somehow, Marcus performed that night. Critics would later say that it was her most emotionally raw performance yet. No one knew that he barely remembered being on stage. The tour continued. Drugs have increased. Blackouts have become more frequent. Vanessa left him after finding him unconscious in the bathroom of a party, making a point of selling the story to the tabloids. "Rising star in downward spiral," the headlines shouted. The record company began to show concern. Julian began to look nervous instead of confident. And then came Detroit, the 20th city of the tour. Marcus doesn't remember much of that night. Fragments only. The dressing room. A discussion with Julian. More pills than usual because his hands wouldn't stop shaking. The roar of the crowd. The blinding lights of the stage. And then nothing. He woke up 3 days later in a hospital, tubes sticking out of his arms, machines beeping at his side, and a familiar fate he hadn't seen in years staring at him with eyes full of suppressed tears. His father. "You overdosed on stage, son," Pastor Johnson said, his voice calm but charged with pain. His heart stopped for almost 2 minutes. Marcus closed his eyes, feeling the weight of his entire life falling on him. "I'm here to take you home," her father continued. "If you want to come." Marcus stepped onto the porch of his parents' house with hesitant steps. The 2-story white house in Oak Ridge seemed to have shrunk since it had last been there years ago. Or perhaps it was he who had diminished, reduced by the shame and addiction that had consumed his life. His father carried his only suitcase, all that was left of a life of excess in New York. Her mother opened the front door, her face a mixture of relief and worry. The hair that Marcus remembered as vibrant brown was now almost completely gray. "Welcome home, son," she said softly, as if talking to a frightened animal that could run away at any moment. The bedroom of his childhood remained largely untouched, a time capsule preserving the boy he had been. Posters of famous missionaries still decorated the walls. The world map with colored pins marking places where he had dreamed of preaching one day hung above his desk. And on the wall over the bed, the phrase hand-painted by his mother remained, "Where he calls me, I will go." Marcus sat on the edge of the bed, feeling the weight of irony crush his chest. What calling had he followed? The call to fame, pleasure, of self-destruction? "I prepared your room as you like," her mother said from the door, misinterpreting her silence. "But we can change anything you want." "It's perfect, Mom," he replied, his voice hoarse. "Thank you." The first few days were hell. His body, deprived of the substances on which it had become dependent, reacted like a wounded and cornered animal. The tremors began on the second night. First only a slight tremor in his hands, then convulsions that shook his entire body. Sweat soaked the sheets, even as the cold January air poured in through the window. Constant nausea left him unable to retain any food. On the third night, the muscle aches intensified, as if every fiber of his body was slowly being torn. Marcus screamed, clinging to the sheets, begging for relief, for anything that could appease the torment. "Please, Dad," he pleaded as Thomas entered the room, alarmed by the screams. "I can't stand it. I need something, anything." His father didn't answer, just sat on the edge of the bed and held his hand firmly while while Marcus writhed in agony. Sarah came in with a basin of cold water and towels. Silently, she began to wipe her son's face, passing the damp towel on his burning forehead. "It will pass, son," she murmured. "We're here with you." For 5 days and nights, his parents took turns by his side. When one rested, the other kept vigil, holding his hand, wiping his face, praying continually. Marcus listened to the murmurs of his prayers through the mist of pain, for strength, for healing, for restoration. On the 6th night, after a particularly brutal episode of withdrawal that left him exhausted and drenched in sweat, Marcus found the strength to form a question that tormented him. "Why are you doing this?" His voice was just a hoarse whisper. "Why don't they give up on me? I gave up on you. I gave up everything." His mother, sitting in the chair next to the bed, her face scarred by years of worry he hadn't witnessed, leaned forward. She took his hand between hers, hands now wrinkled and age-stained, but still strong and sure. "Because love doesn't give up, Marcus," she said simply. "Never." Something in those simple words, not an elaborate sermon, not a rebuke, just a fundamental truth, penetrated the armor of cynicism he had built around his heart, like a small ray of light finding a fissure in a wall of darkness. Gradually, the physical symptoms of withdrawal began to subside. The tremor became less frequent, the nausea more tolerable, the pain less intense. Marcus began to eat small meals, to sleep for longer periods without being woken up by nightmares or pain. The weeks turned into months. His father took him daily to a rehabilitation center in Knoxville, an hour away, where Marcus participated in individual therapy and support groups. In the evenings, he would return to the safety of his parents' home for quiet but comforting dinners and nights of gradual recovery. Therapists had recommended manual labor as part of the recovery process, something to keep your hands busy and your mind focused on concrete tasks. That's how Marcus found himself one afternoon in March, helping his father fix the roof of the garage, damaged during a winter storm. The air was crisp, with the first hint of the approaching spring. Marcus passed tiles to his father, who fixed them with precise and experienced movements. They worked in silence for nearly an hour, the only sound being rhythmic hammering and occasional brief instructions. "Pass me 3 more tiles," Thomas said, reaching out without looking. Marcus obeyed, watching his father's hands that had baptized hundreds of people, that had held Bibles worn out by decades of use, that had wiped his face through nights of abstinence, hands that had never given up on him. "How can you look at me without hating me, Dad?" The question escaped before he could contain it. "After everything I've done, all the lies, all the deceptions." Thomas stopped hammering. He put the tool aside and sat down, looking at the horizon where the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. For a long moment, he did not answer, and Marcus feared that he had finally asked the question to which there was no acceptable answer. "Do you remember that song we used to sing in the car?" his father finally asked. "Are You Good?" by Israel Houghton? Marcus nodded, a lump forming in his throat. That song had been the soundtrack to so many family trips, his father singing enthusiastically while driving, his mother harmonizing, and young Marcus trying to hit the high notes. "There's a line in it that says, 'People of every nation, of every generation will bow down,'" Thomas continued. "Do you know what this means to me? It means that no matter how far we go, how deeply we fall, His love is greater, its range is longer, His grace is stronger." His father turned to face him, eyes shining with unshed tears. "I love you because I am your father, but more than that, I love you because I got a glimpse of how God loves you, and this love is unbreakable, son." The words hovered between them, simple but profound. Marcus couldn't answer. His throat closed with emotion. Instead, he took another tile and passed it to his father, who accepted it with a small smile of understanding. That night, alone in his room, Marcus opened the drawer of the bedside table. There, under old notebooks and broken pencils, he found his old Bible, the same one his parents had given him when he turned 12, with his name engraved on the leather cover. Hesitantly, as if touching a sacred relic, he opened it for the first time in years. The familiar smell of paper and leather brought back a wave of memory. Bible studies at the kitchen table, verses memorized for Sunday school, promises made with childlike faith. The pages fell naturally into a psalm that his mother had underlined. Years earlier, the margins filled with her delicate handwriting. grounding. He pulled me out of a pit of destruction, out of a quagmire of mud. He put my feet on a rock and established me in a safe place. Marcus ran his fingers over the words, feeling the texture of the paper, the small elevations where the pen had pressed hardest. The words, so familiar and yet completely new, seemed to speak directly to his situation, as if they had been written specifically for this moment, for him. For the first time in years, Marcus cried, not tears of despair or self-pity that had become so familiar, but tears of something he had forgotten how he felt, hope. The next day, over breakfast, he made a request that surprised even himself. "Can I go to church with you on Sunday?" Her mother's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. His father looked over his reading glasses, the momentarily forgotten newspaper. "Sure, son," Thomas replied carefully, as if he feared that any overenthusiasm might make Marcus change his mind. "We would be very happy." When Sunday rolled around, Marcus felt a nervousness he hadn't experienced since his first performances in New York. He dressed carefully, dark trousers and a simple shirt, nothing that drew undue attention. Her father, noticing her anxiety, put a hand on her shoulder as they prepared to leave. "You don't have to do this if you're not ready," he said gently. "I'm ready," Marcus replied, though his voice betrayed his uncertainty. "I need to do this." Oak Ridge First Baptist Church had not changed much. The same white building with a steeple, the same gravel parking lot, the same familiar faces, though now older with children who had grown up and new members Marcus didn't recognize. He felt the looks as soon as he entered the lobby, the barely disguised whisper, the prodigal son returning not in triumph but broken and humiliated. "Marcus Johnson, is that really you? I heard you overdosed." Poor Pastor Thomas and Sarah. "What have you been through?" Marcus kept his eyes downcast, following his parents to a bench at the back of the sanctuary, well away from the first row where the Johnson family traditionally sat. His father had retired 2 years earlier, passing leadership to a younger pastor, but he was still a respected figure in the congregation. The service began with announcements and welcomes. Marcus remained rigid, aware of every glance in his direction, every whisper behind raised hands. Part of him wanted to get up and run. Another part, a part that was growing stronger every day, knew it needed to be there. Then the choir stood, and the music director announced the first hymn, "Thou Art Good." Marcus felt as if the air had been sucked out of his lungs. Of all the possible songs, this one, today? The first chord sounded from the piano, and the congregation stood. Marcus remained seated for a moment, his legs refusing to cooperate, until his father gently helped him to his feet. The choir began, and soon the congregation joined. "Lord, you are good, and your mercy endures forever. People of all nations and of all generations will bow down. We stand up to sing thy glories and thy majesty." The words that had echoed in his mind during his darkest moments in New York, in the nights of solitude in his luxurious apartment, in the bathrooms of nightclubs as his body rejected excesses, in the hospital bed after his overdose, now filled the sanctuary, sung by voices who had known him since childhood. Something broke inside Marcus, not of destruction, but of liberation, as if a levee had broken, releasing years of pent-up pain, shame, and regret. The tears came without warning, running freely down her face. He didn't try to hum, not at first. He just let the music envelop him, the words penetrate the layers of protection he had built. But in the final chorus, almost without realizing it, her lips began to move, forming the words she knew by heart. "You are good, you are good, and your mercy endures forever." His voice was just a raspy whisper, audible only to himself and perhaps to his parents next to him. There, in the back pew of a small-town church, the man who had sung to thousands in arenas now sang in a broken whisper only to one. After the service, Marcus avoided the traditional socializing, waiting in the car while his parents said goodbye to Fred. But even in that brief moment of loneliness, he felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time. A tenuous peace, fragile like the first layer of ice on a lake in early winter, but present. Marcus's journey was far from over. Recovery is not a straight line, but a winding path of ups and downs, victories and relapses. But for the first time in years, he wasn't walking alone. Over the next few weeks, Marcus began to rebuild his life, brick by brick. He got a modest job at the city's musical instrument store, not as the star he had been, but as a simple salesman, helping customers choose guitars and tuning, piano. The owner, an old friend of his father, offered the job without asking questions about his past. Marcus faithfully attended recovery meetings 3 times a week. Gradually, he began to share his story with others in the the group. Not the glamorized version of his rise and fall, but the raw truth about how he had traded everything that really mattered for empty applause and temporary pleasures. Gradually, he also began to reconnect with his faith, not the superficial, performative faith of his youth, but something deeper, more authentic, tested by the fire of experience. He began attending a young adult Bible study group where no one expected him to be perfect or have all the answers. One evening, after one of these meetings, youth pastor Mike Reynolds, a man only a few years older than Marcus, with tattoos on his sleeves and a relaxed approach to faith, approached him in the parking lot. "Hey Marcus, got a minute?" "Sure, Pastor Mike," Marcus replied, still getting used to calling someone so close his age a pastor. "Our worship leader Jason is moving to Nashville next month. He got a job in the music industry there." Mike paused, studying Marcus's face. "We were thinking, would you consider taking over?" The immediate fear was overwhelming. Lead worship? He, after all? Images of his last performance in Detroit, the stage spinning, the lights going down, the panic of feeling his heart fail, invaded his mind. "I don't think he's the right person," Marcus replied, looking at the parking lot floor. "My past, your past, is exactly what makes you perfect for this," Mike interrupted. "These young people don't need someone perfect. They need someone real, someone who knew both heights and depths, someone who can honestly say that God is good even when life isn't." Marcus looked at the young shepherd, surprised by the prospect. "Think about it," Mike said, patting him on the shoulder. "Pray about it. You don't need to answer now." Marcus promised to think about it. That night, he couldn't sleep. Lying in his childhood bed, staring at the family ceiling, memories of his life in New York mingled with the words of the song he couldn't get out of his head. "You're good." Did he really believe that now? After all, after the fame that corrupted him, the substances that almost killed him, the people he had hurt, could he sing these words with conviction, not just as a performance to impress an audience, but as genuine testimony? The answer came, not as thunder or a dramatic revelation, but as a gentle whisper in your heart. "Not because your life was perfect, but because I was with you even in the darkest valley." The following Sunday, with trembling hands and an insecure voice, Marcus Johnson took the church stage for the first time in nearly a decade. There were no spectacular light, no crowd shouting his name, no substances in his system to propel him. There was only a broken man, a borrowed guitar, and a song that he now understood as never before. "Good morning," he said into the microphone, his voice barely audible. The congregation, including many young people who had come especially after hearing rumors that the famous Marcus Johnson would lead the worship, looked at him with expressions ranging from curiosity to skepticism. "Many of you know me, or knew," he continued. "For those who don't know my story, I've been away for a long time. I was lost." His voice cracked, and he had to take a deep breath before continuing. "But," another pause, another breath, "but I have found that no matter how far I go, God's love goes even further." And then, fingers finding the familiar chords, he began to sing Tu es bon. Her voice, although hoarser and less polished than in the New York days, carried something that no vocal technique could teach: authenticity born of experience. "Lord, you are good, and your mercy endures forever." As he sang, Marcus saw faces in the congregation, some with tears, others with smiles of encouragement. He saw his parents in the third row, holding hands, eyes closed in adoration and gratitude. He saw Pastor Mike in the background, arms folded, nodding approvingly. And for the first time in years, Marcus Johnson felt truly at home. But Marcus's story was far from over. The past doesn't disappear simply because we decide to follow a new path. And sometimes the consequences of our choices reach us when we least expect it. If this story is touching your heart, leave a comment below. Share with someone who needs to hear that it's never too far away for God's love to reach. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the continuation of this incredible journey. The morning after his first time leading the praise, Marcus received a call that made his blood run cold. A New York number. The voice on the other end was the last one he expected to hear. "Marcus, it's Julian. We need to talk. The record company is suing you for breach of contract. I'm going there, and there's one more thing you need to know." What was Julian hiding? How would Marcus face his past when it came knocking on his door? And would his newfound faith be strong enough to withstand the coming storm? Don't miss the continuation of this exciting story next week. Part 2 of The Journey of Redemption will bring surprising revelation and show how divine love can not only restore, but completely transform a broken life. Click on the subscribe button right now. Turn on notifications and leave your comment on what you think of this first part. Your participation means a lot to us. Until next time, when we will discover together that no matter how dark the night, God's goodness always finds us the next morning.